The year is 1878, and this 11-year-old girl has just lost her mother to tuberculosis and her elder sister to typhus. These events cause the young Marie Curie to lose her faith in Catholicism and become agnostic. Despite this painful loss, she keeps her head up. As a teenager, despite her brilliance and her deep love for science, she is not allowed to enroll at the University of Warsaw, simply because she is a woman. This hurdle does not stop her. Instead, she makes a pact with her sister, Bronya. Marie would support Bronya financially while she studied medicine in Paris. And once Bronya completed her degree, she would support Marie so that she too could attend university in Paris. To honor her side of the pact, Marie works as a governess for roughly 5 years, sacrificing her own academic dreams and delaying her future. She puts her life on hold so her sister can move forward. Bronya becomes a doctor. True to her word, Bronya helps Marie move to Paris in 1891 so she can finally begin her studies. Marie Curie would go on to become the first woman in history to receive a Nobel Prize, and not once, but twice. When the Nobel Prize was first proposed, French academics originally suggested that only her husband and Henri Becquerel, her research partners, receive the honor. But her husband insisted that Marie be included, refusing to accept the prize without her. Despite these challenges, and despite a system that was already rigged against her, she never gave up. And today, her work has revolutionized medicine. Marie wasn't blocked because she lacked talent. She was blocked because the system didn't favor women at the time. For many people, this is where the story ends. This is unfair. The system is rigged. Why should I keep trying? But Marie didn't argue with reality. She worked around it. She accepted that the path wouldn't be fair and adjusted her strategy instead of abandoning her goal. People quit early because they expect the world to reward effort immediately. Marie Curie didn't succeed because she had more certainty than everyone else. She succeeded because she stayed, when quitting would have made perfect sense. And that's the real reason most people give up too early. They leave right before the invisible work turns into visible impact. But sometimes, it isn't discrimination that pushes people toward quitting. Sometimes it's the feeling that you simply don't belong at all. And that brings us to our next story. Welcome to Triops. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 compelling stories of people who almost walked away before their breakthrough, and what their moments of doubt teach us about persistence, pressure, and the cost of quitting too early. The year is 1862, and this 15-year-old boy is already being told, in one way or another, that he doesn't fit. The boy is Thomas Edison. He was pulled out of formal school early. His teachers describe him as difficult and slow. He struggles to follow rigid instructions, asks too many questions, and can't sit still long enough to memorize what he's told. Eventually, the system decides he isn't worth the effort. So, his education ends, almost as soon as it begins. What saves him is his mother. She pulls him out of school and begins teaching him at home, encouraging his curiosity instead of punishing it. Edison spends his days reading obsessively, experimenting in basements and train cars, turning any spare corner into a makeshift laboratory. But curiosity doesn't pay bills. As a teenager, Edison worked as a newspaper seller and telegraph operator, bouncing from job to job. He is fired repeatedly, sometimes for experimenting on the equipment, sometimes for falling asleep on night shifts, sometimes simply for not following rules well enough. By his early 20s, Edison was already partially deaf, broke more often than not, and completely unknown. Still, he kept building. He files his first patents, only to watch them fail commercially. He starts businesses that collapse. Investors walk away. Experiments burn down workshops. Years of work disappear overnight. There is no dramatic breakthrough yet, just long stretches of failure, stacked on top of one another. Then comes the light bulb. Not the invention, but the process. Edison and his team test thousands of filament materials, watching each one burn out, crack, or fail. Assistants quit. Critics mock him publicly. Newspapers frame his work as an obsession, bordering on delusion. When asked why he keeps going, Edison doesn't describe himself as hopeful or confident. He simply refuses to interpret failure as a signal to stop. Eventually, one filament works, and the world changes. Thomas Edison would go on to hold over 1,000 patents, shaping modern electricity, sound recording, and motion pictures. But none of that success was visible during the years when quitting would have seemed reasonable. Testing thousands of filaments looks insane from the outside. It feels repetitive, pointless, soul-crushing. That's where most people stop, not because the goal is impossible, but because the process becomes boring and humiliating. Edison stayed because he accepted a brutal truth. Breakthroughs are built on monotony. People quit too early because they crave progress that feels exciting. Real progress often feels dull. Edison didn't succeed because he avoided failure. He succeeded because he stayed long enough for failure to run out of ways to stop him. Edison's story reminds us that progress rarely feels heroic while it's happening. It feels repetitive, dull, almost pointless. And that's where most people stop. Not because the dream is impossible, but because the journey feels too ordinary. But sometimes, quitting isn't driven by boredom or rejection at all. Sometimes it comes from a deeper belief that your beginning has already disqualified you. That belief followed our next figure from the very beginning of his life. The year is 1818, and this 9-year-old boy is standing at his mother's grave. He has just lost his mother to what historians believe was milk sickness, a disease caused by poisoned milk on the American frontier. The loss leaves him quiet, withdrawn, and forced to grow up far too early. The young boy is Abraham Lincoln. Formal education is almost non-existent. Over the course of his childhood, Lincoln received less than a year of total schooling. Most of his days are spent doing hard physical labor, clearing land, splitting rails, and working fields. Books are rare, time is scarce. Learning becomes something he steals in moments, reading by firelight when the work is done. As a young man, Lincoln tries to build a life. He opens a small store. It fails. He runs for the state legislature. He loses. He studies law on his own and eventually becomes a lawyer, only to lose case after case early in his career. Personally, his life is just as unstable. Lincoln suffers from recurring deep depression, what his friends called melancholy. At one point, those close to him fear he may not survive his own despair. Nothing about his early life suggests greatness, only persistence. Still, he keeps moving forward. He runs for Congress and loses. He runs again and loses again. Years later, he runs for the U.S. Senate and is defeated in a nationally watched election. By his late 40s, Lincoln is widely known, not as a winner, but as someone who almost makes it. Then in 1860, he was elected President of the United States. Almost immediately, the country begins to fracture. The Civil War erupts. The nation tears itself apart. Casualties rise into the hundreds of thousands. Lincoln is mocked, doubted, and openly criticized by newspapers, generals, and even members of his own government. Many believe he is in over his head. Yet, he does not quit. He endures loss after loss on the battlefield, politically and personally. His young son dies while he is in office. The pressure is relentless, and still, he stays. By the end of the war, Lincoln had preserved the Union and issued the Emancipation Proclamation, changing the moral and political direction of the country forever. He never lived to see the full weight of what he had done, but history would remember him not for how often he failed, only for the fact that he stayed long enough to matter. Lincoln's life didn't start wrong. It started hard. Minimal education, poverty, manual labor, loss at a young age. Most people interpret a difficult beginning as a signal that they are not meant for more. Lincoln didn't. He understood something most people never learn. Where you start has almost nothing to do with where you're capable of ending up. People quit too early because they believe their beginnings define their ceiling. Lincoln proves they don't. Marie Curie teaches us that progress often requires working around realities we cannot control. Thomas Edison shows us that breakthroughs are built through repetition, so ordinary that it feels meaningless. And Abraham Lincoln reminds us that difficult beginnings do not define where we can end up. Different lives, different eras, yet the same hidden truth keeps appearing. People rarely quit because they lack talent. They quit because progress feels invisible, because effort doesn't look like movement, because doubt grows louder than evidence. The real danger isn't failure, it's leaving too early, before the invisible part of the work has time to reveal itself. Progress almost always feels slow from the inside, until one day, looking back, it suddenly looks inevitable.